I'm making another album, although this week it feels more like music production admin week because I made the decision to move the songs that I'm working on into a different DAW. So some of the songs I'm working on are already that they were recorded into Ableton. Some of them I've recorded into Logic, but, and you might think this is massively overcomplicating things for myself, but I'll tell you why it might not be in a second. But what I'm doing to finish them and mix them is move them into Luna, which is the Universal Audio DAW. And so when I would usually have been doing discovery and draft sessions, I've simply been doing the very boring work of doing some kind of exporting of tracks and some exporting of MIDI files and all of that kind of nonsense, and then getting it into shape in a different DAW. And I mean, it could be that this is a waste of time because Luna itself, no DAW sounds different to another DAW. I mean, they work differently and you might prefer different things about Logic to Ableton, or Ableton to Logic, or Reaper to this or that to the other, whichever DAW you like. And to be honest with you, there are lots of things about Luna I don't like in terms of editing MIDI and editing audio and stuff like that. But the reason I decided to move things into Luna is because there's a particular feature which saves me an enormous amount of time and brain space. And those two things are obviously related. And that is simply that Luna has is it a plugin? Yeah, I guess it's a plugin that goes into it called the console, where you can, across however many tracks you want, you don't have to do it on all the tracks, but I tend to use all of the tracks. You can put an API. I think they've also got a Neve one, but I use the API one. You can put an API console emulation over every track, so it kind of emulates using an API console. Now, I'm not going to go into whether it sounds like an API or not. I don't know. But it sounds great, put it that way. Simply the act of just putting it through the thing makes it sound, but I mean, it just sounds good. And I thought what I would do, because I'm getting to the stage where I'm about to move. I was this time last week, I was getting to the stage where there was a few tracks that were about to do their final draft session, the into done session, where you kind of do a rough mix. And I thought, at this stage, it's probably worth me seeing whether I am going to move everything into Luna, because I didn't really want to do it. I was like, it's probably overcomplicating it, and Logic and Ableton are great. They're fine. So I could just do it that way. So I did it. I just thought, what I'll do is I'll just try it with one of the songs. And so I moved that into Luna. And what I found myself doing, and put everything through the API console emulation. And what I found myself doing was muting things. So muting parts and taking things away, which led me to believe that this actually would lead to a much better result. Because, I mean, I didn't really do an enormous amount with the API stuff. What I tend to do with the API console is, I tend to do this in general actually, is because I've got a load of presets made by various different mix engineers and stuff. So with the API console, so I just choose one that's in the ballpark. So if there's a piano, if I've got a piano part, I'll just find one. There's one called Yacht Rock Piano or something like that. I think that's one of my favorites. So I'll just do that, and then I'll just do a little tweak with that preset. So I'll use the preset as a starting point and then just tweak it a bit. And it's the same, and bear in mind with a console emulation, it's got a preamp, it's got an EQ, it's got a compressor, and then also it's got the summing as well, which I don't really know what that is, but you just send it to a bus and put it through a summing thing, and it sounds cool. so basically, and they've got all of these different presets. So that's how I do it. And this it was saving me an enormous amount of time to get a much better result than I would have done had I been trying to do the same thing with various different plugins, because it just reduces the number of options I need to think about. I'm using the same EQ, the same compressor, the same preamp, the same all of these different things. I'm using the same thing every single track, and I can, if I want, add other things on top or before the console, so it doesn't stop you from adding other plugins. But basically using the same thing as your sort of base formula, if you like, for doing this kind of work, it just immediately takes out a load of, I could use this, or I could use that, or I could use the other, because you're just using the same thing. The other benefit of doing it this way is that creates a consistent sound, because you're using the same desk, if you like, or the same collection of plugins on and everything. It's kind of more gluey, both within tracks and also across the entire album as well. So that's another benefit of doing this way. But really, for me, the main thing is the reduction in decision load. Because, I'm sure we all have, no matter how disciplined you are about the software that you buy and everything. I mean, even just in like Ableton or Logic, there's about 5,000 different plugins you could use, and it's very, very overwhelming. So this reduces the number of things. And if I need something a bit extra, I can always add that. So if I need to use a different EQ, or not need to, but if I want to use a different EQ or a different effect or a different compressor or a bit different saturation, I can still do that. It's just I'm starting with the base assumption that, all right, so this is where, I don't have to use any of the extra things. I can just use this API console emulation. So when I did that with one track and realized that all of a sudden I wanted to mute things and that it was sounding better when I was muting things. I was taking things away and it was sounding better. That led me to realize that actually this sounds good. This sounds really good as it is. And I mean, I can't really describe how it sounds good. And I'm pretty sure I'm not confirmation biasing myself, because I didn't want to move everything into Luna. Right. It was actually the opposite way around. I desperately wanted it not to make that much of a difference, but it seemed to me. So again, I can't say for sure that's the case, but in my opinion, it seemed to sound a lot better. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to move everything into Luna. And I spent the last week doing that with most of the tracks, but not the things in Discover, with all of the songs I've got in draft. So that's 7 out of 10. And what I also started doing, like one kind of bright point in all of this, because I do feel that I've kind of, it does feel a little bit like taking a step back, because I'm not been doing creative stuff. I've not been moving the music forward. I've just been doing this kind of administrative moving, like files, etc. So it feels a little bit like, but one bright point is on the creative side is that I have done, except for yesterday and today, I have done splurges with just my vocal, just a song. It's not really a song, but just improvised vocal and the DFAM. And what I decided to do was one of the other things that I found with Luna was that the latency is not an issue in the slightest. And obviously it's always a little bit of an issue because you can't use every plugin, but if you're using basically the native Luna plugins, the stuff it kind of, the UAD stuff it comes with, the actual, so for instance, the console, the API console and stuff like that, then it has no latency. I'm sure it isn't zero latency, but effectively to the human ear, it's zero latency. And so it's like, it's actually set up to be able to record things. And obviously I'm making music, like, even though I'm doing it in a DAW, like almost, I'm using the DAW as a tape recorder, more than I am moving blocks around on a screen. So, for someone like that, for someone who's doing that, it's really great. Even though I don't really like the editing capabilities of Luna. I don't like the way you edit things in Luna at the moment. It's probably because I'm not used to it. But, on the other side, that's also a plus side for Luna, because it's going to motivate me to not edit and instead get a decent recording, which is where I want to go anyway. So actually the fact that I don't like the way that Luna works as a DAW, but I like the way it works as a kind of recording machine, means that it's going to incentivize me. I mean, when you're thinking about what you're using, think about the incentives that these softwares and pieces of equipment are creating for you. So I think it's a really kind of important thing to think about. What is it telling you to do? What is the setup that you have telling you to do? So, in this case for me, Luna is telling me, well, don't do too much editing, right? Just do another take, or, record another version, which is where I want to be going anyway. So I set up a template in Luna for the voice and defam splurge, and I've splurged, I think, 5 days out of 7, which is good. But the last couple of days I didn't, because I've got to the end of getting everything into Luna and felt really like, I've absolutely got to get these scary bears that I've got in the Discovery. So I've got these 3 problematic songs that haven't made their way into draft yet. And it's like basically what it is that they need a second section. And I've done a couple of Discovery sessions on them, and sort of haven't felt that's gone particularly well. So in fact, I'm going to make another album podcast about this subject, because this is a slightly different subject area. But essentially, over the last couple of days, I've been focused on doing Discovery sessions on those 3 problematic tracks to get back into momentum. But for today, that's it. That's my update on how the album's been going. I'm now, apart from these 3 problematic tracks, fully in Luna. Excited to get onto the next stage. I'm going to start getting things into done. And today I'm walking around my studio. So it's probably about time for me to stop talking about making an album and start making one.